Hello! Welcome to the Joy of Writing. I am Will. You may know me from Talk Bomb, my little podcast network, my little production company where we do a bunch of podcasts like Will and Bobby Know Everything and Book Club Schmook Club. You might know me because I run the small little horror blog, thehauntedsponge.com, where I post reviews and theories about horror movies. You might just know me because I'm Will. And if you do, well, thank you for joining me. No matter how you know me, thank you for joining me. And just so you know, I can always be found online on Twitter at Will Rogers 2000, on Instagram at Will Rogers 2000. And tonight, I'm going to try something a little bit different. For the past 5 years, I think we literally just hit this anniversary. For the past 5 years, I've been producing podcasts. We started with Will and Bobby Know Everything. With my co-host slash writing partner, Bobby. Hey, happy birthday, Bobby. It's Bobby's actual birthday today. And the reason that we started podcasting in the first place was because we were writers who felt like we needed something more immediate to do. Bobby had just moved to Brooklyn, and so we weren't able to see each other as much as we always had been. And so part of it was that podcasting was an excuse to be able to talk to each other and catch up weekly. But honestly, and this is never something that we really talked about, but it's something that, especially lately, I've been learning more about myself, is that podcasting is a very immediate experience. You're literally sitting there in a room together and just talking, having a conversation, trying to make each other laugh. And it's instant gratification because the second that you're done with the show, assuming you don't need to edit or anything, you can just put it online and get, if you're lucky, feedback from listeners and entertain other people. And over the past 5 years, our listenership has grown. We've started other shows. Book Club Schmook Club that I host with my sister Kristen has been really, I say all this in a bubble. Context is important. It's still small, but we've got amazing listeners who seem like they enjoy the show and like to talk back to us, and it's everything is very immediate. That's not what writing is, though. Writing is very methodical and sometimes quiet, and it typically happens in a closed room where no one can see you, because writing requires editing, and because writing requires thinking. And Bobby and I started out as writers, but over the course of these 5 years, we've become primarily podcasters, entertainers, or performers. And that's not what I started out with my goal being. And over the past 5 years, I've been thinking, okay, am I a performer? Am I a podcaster or a storyteller or whatever? And I think that I've learned that yes, I am. And I like doing those things. And I want to continue to explore those avenues and push everything further, but I also still love writing. Like every week I produce a comedy show that you guys can listen to. It's out there and they're free. They're like totally free. They don't cost anything. And we've set up ways that you can help support us if you want. Cool. But I still, when I'm driving to work, when I'm alone, I'm not thinking of things to share on a podcast. That's not what occupies my mind. What I'm thinking about are story ideas. I have a tendency to just cook up a new idea that would most likely work for a TV show. That's what I've always been focused on, is TV shows. That's what Bobby and I always wrote together. But occasionally I'll hit on an idea that doesn't seem like it would be good for a TV show. Maybe it would be good for a movie. Maybe it's better for something smaller and more bite-sized. And so I decided that maybe it's time to start to take another look at whether or not I can be a writer, or if I am supposed to be a writer in the sense that that's where my energy really goes. So real quick, because what I'm going to do here tonight is something that is so counterintuitive, it seems. It's so against what historically I've always done, but I'm kind of ready to push outside my comfort zone, and I really want to do something strange. So, I'm going to say this. About 10 years ago, Bobby and I met and we started writing together, and we wrote some hilarious, I think really creative and clever things. But if you know me, then you've probably heard me complain about this before. If you listen to any of the podcasts I do, you've definitely heard me talk about this to the point where it's just like it's a wacky sort of stupid joke, but it's true. So I'm going to tell it again here just so I can sort of set the table so that maybe for the people that don't know my history with writing, we can all get on the same page to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing tonight. So about 10 years ago, Bobby and I started writing together, and we started writing a comedy show that was centered on young adults. We were young, we were in college, and it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like I never felt like I belonged there. We made a lot of mistakes together, and basically out of that entire experience, we came up with a comedy show about going to college, but not doing anything college related. You go to college, you're technically there, but it has nothing to do with what your life is. And shortly after we came up with that idea, actually we wrote, they exist somewhere. My hard drive got fried, but they exist somewhere. We have six full scripted episodes of that show. But we never knew who to show them to. We never knew how to take it to the next level where it wasn't just us making each other laugh in a coffee shop. And so we didn't do anything with it. And then the show Community happened, which Community has actually come and gone since all this started. So that illustrates how long it's been. But it felt like the show Community, about all these people going to a community college together, and it's just like full of kind of like crazy, weird, maniac cartoon characters. It felt like what we were writing, and so it felt like we were done. Like what we were doing had already been created. So, we had heard that when you're pitching a TV show, you should not just bring one show. You should have something else in your back pocket. The idea that that was explained to us is that if you're pitching a show to a network and they can't work on that particular idea, but they like you should have another idea that you can offer and say, okay, we'll still consider us because you like us, but we know you're already working on a show that's very similar to that idea, so here's this other show. So Bobby and I started working on a second show. We wrote two short scripts, just a few pages long, and the idea that we had seemed incredibly novel. Actually, two really novel ideas. One, the show was a zombie show. At the time, I had never heard of there being an ongoing zombie story. For me, it was always the George Romero, Night of the Living Dead, then Dawn of the Dead, then Day of the Dead. And they, he makes one, and then 10 years later he makes another, and then 10 years later he makes another. They were all, they're movies, they're long movies, but they were all bite-sized. It begins, and then it ends, and it's actually over. So our idea was take a zombie story, the zombie apocalypse, and make it an ongoing, conceivably never-ending show. So we took these two little scripts that we had been working on, and we talked to a buddy of ours who's a graphic artist. He's a comic book artist. And we said, hey, we want to take these little scripts, these little zombie show scripts, and we want to turn them into comic books. We want to make them like storyboards so that we can display to people, here's how the show looks and here's how it feels without ever having to shoot a frame. Seems like a good idea in 2011 maybe, something like that. So we sat down with our friend and explained the idea to him, and he said, yeah, that is a good idea. Have you ever heard of The Walking Dead? And we hadn't. I had never heard of it. I'm not a big comic book reader. I had never heard of The Walking Dead before. It is, as we all know, an ongoing zombie story. It started as a comic book. Within a year or two, something like that, it was released on AMC and it became the biggest, craziest thing. It has spin-offs. Everybody freaks out and loses their minds about it. So we did not approach that show. Although I will show you right here real quick that our buddy Matt Battaglia did draw one splash page for us based on one of our scripts. So I'm gonna cut to that right now. I hope it displays well. Here we go. The Dead Don't Walk. That was the name of the show. The Dead Don't Walk. And you can see this is I always love this artwork. Absolutely beautiful artwork. Matt Battaglia is incredibly talented, and he's gone on to have a really interesting, cool career in comics. So he produced this page for us, which I loved, but also told us that The Walking Dead is a thing, which I did not know about, and so here I am. We invented The Walking Dead before The Walking Dead happened, and not only that, we called our show The Dead Don't Walk, which just sounds like the biggest, most bitter rebuttal to The Walking Dead that I can imagine. The Walking Dead is successful. Yeah, well, the dead don't walk. Okay, so that's our thing, and it's great. Anyway, so Bobby and I wrote The Dead Don't Walk, and then realized that it was dead in the water. So we were back to having one show. We were still pretty confident that we didn't know what to do with it, and that it had already been made with Community, but we wanted to have 2 shows. So we started developing a second show, and this time we didn't want it to be horror. We still didn't want to do something that was like 2 comedy shows. We wanted to have some sort of diversity in our portfolio. So we wrote a mystery show. And this is probably the dumbest idea we ever had, although I still like aspects of it, large aspects of it. We wrote a concept for a show called Edinburgh Falls. The idea of Edinburgh Falls was that a struggling writer goes away to a small town that's totally secluded, totally remote. He wants to get away to sort of recharge his batteries and come up with another great story to write. And while he's there, just sort of like weird things start happening. Now that I've seen the show Twin Peaks, it felt like we were writing Twin Peaks. Not that that's like, we were definitely being derivative of a million things, but whatever. At a certain point, the writer tries to leave the town. He tries to drive out. He's been kind of threatened. He kind of sees like a weird little ghost. Actually, here's a crazy thing. So the idea of the show was going to be that it was all based on American folklore. A lot of like famous American monsters. Like we wanted Bigfoot to have originated in this town. Edinburgh is what it's called. The town was Edinburgh. And so we were researching sort of American folklore creatures. And one of the things that I found was a creature called the Nez Rouge. And if I remember it correctly, and I may not, the Nez Rouge was a small sort of impish red colored monster that is like a sign of forewarning, something like that. I whatever. But so basically our main character was going to come face to face with this little red from top to foot short thing, creature, whatever. I mean, it wasn't human, it was a creature, and that was going to scare him and he was going to try to leave town. Now I've seen Twin Peaks. I had not at that time, and there is literally in that show a character called the Man from Another Place who is a little person who wears a red suit. So maybe that was based on the Nez Rouge. Maybe both things are based on the same piece of folklore. I don't know. But now it seems like even more derivative than I thought it was at the time. But basically, the main character tries to drive out of town, and all of a sudden, he's driving back in. So almost as if he has no idea why. He's driving on one straight road out of town, and the town disappears into the horizon in his rearview mirror, and it also comes up over the horizon right in front of him. Really cool idea, but we couldn't figure out a way to explain why that was. Eventually, we decided that a wall of stone, basically a mountain range, would begin to encircle the town. So it's literally being cut off from society. This giant mountain range is now 100% all the way around the town, and that seems kind of cool visually, but eventually we decided that was going to be because the government had a secret base, and the town was built on top of the base, and the base, this government base that studies the paranormal or something, is actually kind of like a screw. So the town of Edinburgh is slowly drilling into the earth to prevent people from escaping. And so that wall of rock would be getting higher and higher every season. Cool idea visually, dumb idea. From a story perspective, we abandoned it. And then the final-ish idea that we ever had was we essentially said, all right, screw it. Let's write something that just feels like what people would want to watch on television. Prior to that, we've been writing things that we wanted to write, things that we wanted to see, and then we decided, okay, people love things like CSI and Law and Order, so let's write one of those. And we had been watching Silence of the Lambs and Red Dragon when we started talking about how those are basically the same movie twice. Both the Hannibal Lecter movies, 2 of them. And, well, why couldn't you do that every week? In one episode, Hannibal Lecter is helping the police track down this serial killer. Then in the next episode, it's Hannibal Lecter helping the police track down that serial killer. And just do that. Just do that. 20 episodes a season for 5 years. And we got pretty far into talking about it. Our character's name was Henry Crane, which I like, instead of Hannibal Lecter, because we obviously, it's not like we were going to try to pitch that the show be called Hannibal. And within a week, I think literally within a week, the show Hannibal had been announced. So that I feel marked pretty much the beginning of the end. The only one of those shows that still exists is The Walking Dead. Hannibal has come and gone. Community has come and gone, and nobody ever made Edinburgh Falls, although you could argue that Lost and stuff, but we were pretty much ripping that off. So we kind of sort of stopped. And then Bob moved, and we started up the podcasts, and here I am, 5 years later. I'm mostly, based on the things that I actively do, I'm like 99% a podcaster and maybe 1% a writer. So part of my frustration always has been that everything that we've come up with appears because somebody else is doing it. So I decided that I'm sick of that, and I'm sick of feeling like the things that I come up with are getting made somewhere. Obviously, I'm not accusing somebody of taking the ideas that no one's paying attention. It doesn't matter. But on the one hand, I can feel good about having ideas that eventually become at least moderately successful. I can pat myself on the back for coming up with ideas that are very obviously in the cultural zeitgeist, enough so that people are producing them elsewhere. But at the end of the day, I still don't have anything that I've produced of my own at all. So here I go. I'm now going to half pitch, half work out an idea for a new project that I had, and I'm going to say it on the internet, technically publicly, although not many people are in the chat. I'm going to do the opposite of what I usually do, which is come up with ideas and let them ruminate in my head. I'm going to put them down on a piece of paper right now as I broadcast them, and I think technically that means that I'm the first. Half of this is that I want to be able to just state my ideas. I want to get the instant gratification of podcasting and live streaming and mix that with what I love but find to be endlessly frustrating, which is writing, especially writing for myself. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to loosely pitch this idea first. And this is the kind of thing that like I am so struggling over because it feels totally counterintuitive and like a bad idea to go on the internet and state an idea you had for a show or a comic or anything. Because on the one hand, I feel like that means that anyone could take that idea and run with it. But on the other hand, I feel like this is at least, if I get nothing out of this, if I'm not able to actually produce this, at least I can share this idea and kind of get it off my chest. Okay, so here's the idea. In the 40s, in the 1940s, Indiana Jones happened. I already feel like an idiot. Bear in mind that when I talk about Indiana Jones during this, I'm not literally talking about the actual character of Indiana Jones. I'm talking about events like those. So, in the 1940s, a bunch of sort of adventurers and government agents fighting against the Nazis and against Adolf Hitler, who was getting an increased fascination with the paranormal and the supernatural. They raced Nazis to different hotspots around the globe that had these sort of mythical artifacts. So, for the sake of this argument, I'm literally now going to talk about Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. So, here's what I'm going to suppose for my idea. Indiana Jones races against the Nazis to get his hands on the Lost Ark of the Covenant. As we all know from the end of the first Indiana Jones movies, they get the Ark of the Covenant, and then they open it, and the Nazis' faces all melt off, because this is a power that nobody can comprehend. No human can wrap their minds around exactly what is going on. It's definitely paranormal, but we don't really understand what it is. It's supposed to, I think, be, if I remember correctly, and I should, because I've seen the movie a million times and seen different versions of it, it's supposed to be these stone tablets that Moses brought down off the mountain, right? So at the end of the movie, when they open it up, there's dust inside. That's it. And I always thought that was like almost the stone tablets over time were crushed and almost powdered. That is them. They're just turned into dust. Everyone's faces melt off, and the only reason that Indiana Jones and Marion Ravenwood survive is because they kept their eyes closed. They didn't look at it. But there are all these ghosts flying around. It's definitely paranormal. So, they've defeated the Nazis through kind of no doing of their own. The Nazis are all dead. Indiana Jones and Marion Ravenwood managed to get the Ark of the Covenant back onto U.S. soil. They don't really document that. I don't know how. But then, as we all know, very famously, there's the iconic moment at the end where Indiana Jones, he thinks all these things belong in a museum. But these government agents tell him that they've got their top men working on this artifact. He can't have it back. He can't be told where it's going. And we get this long, slow shot, the final shot of the movie, of the Ark of the Covenant being loaded onto a hand truck and being pushed down this gigantic warehouse filled with other crates. This Ark of the Covenant will now be one of countless crates in this huge warehouse. Now, we did that. Indiana Jones, this fictional character, did that to keep a power like this out of the hands of a madman, out of the hands of the Nazis. And the message being communicated, I feel, at the end of Indiana Jones, is that the Ark of the Covenant is not unique. There are countless, hundreds of other artifacts like the Ark of the Covenant, and now they're all being stored in one warehouse. And they're being put there to be forgotten. They're being put there to be lost. They're being put there to be taken out of the rest of the world where anybody could get their hands on it, like an Adolf Hitler. But they're all now being housed under one roof. And up until now, I thought that was a happy ending. So, because everything in the world is based on this now, I'm going to talk about Donald Trump. Because I don't think that Indiana Jones or anybody in Raiders of the Lost Ark saw Donald Trump coming. They took all of these artifacts and put them in one place under the U.S. government's control, not realizing that somebody as egomaniacal and unhinged and impulsive as Donald Trump would be running the government. So now, it's 70 years later, and Donald Trump is in charge, and he finds out that we have a warehouse where we keep the Ark of the Covenant and who knows what else. That is the basis of the idea. That is the first thing that I came up with that makes me feel like there's actually a story in this. So, I don't even know how to proceed. The actual scope of what I'm trying to do here, I'm not sure exactly how to push forward. This show is an experiment. It's an experiment for me, and I don't know how great it is going to be to watch this, but I'm, in a minute, literally going to switch so that you can see me writing in Microsoft Word some of these ideas. Because I have not written a single sentence down of this idea. It's all been in my head, and I'm going to start to get it down on paper. So that was the initial germ of the idea. What if Donald Trump finds out that basically Indiana Jones was, what do they say on like Investigation Discovery? A reenactment? When they have like reenactments of crimes on those true crime shows. He basically finds out Indiana Jones is a reenactment of an event that actually occurred. The Ark of the Covenant is real. Who knows what else is real? And not only that, he doesn't have to chase it because 70 years ago, we sent people out around the globe to collect all of these weapons, basically, these supernatural weapons, and put them all under one roof somewhere in the U.S. Now, obviously, it's got to be a huge secret. Okay, let's just go for it. All right, here we go. I'm literally now going to be writing on a blank page live on the internet. Okay, Donald Trump finds out the Ark of the Covenant is real. How do you spell covenant? Okay, now what happens? Obviously, once again, the goal here isn't to write fanfic. I'm not supposing a world where Indiana Jones, where, Harrison Ford is out there, like, swinging across chasms with a whip. That's not what I'm interested in here. But I am interested in the sort of potential for a story about mythology and folklore, and about, hey, we used to when our heroes were out there saving the day, they were enabling a future maniac to destroy everything. Hey, everybody watching, if you I'm having a very interesting experience doing this. It definitely feels vulnerable. If you feel like I'm being crazy, or if you feel like this is a cool idea, there's a chat section for any live stream. Or if you're watching later after I've live streamed, leave a comment and subscribe. I could really use some feedback to know if this is dumb, boring, or if it's cool and kind of fun and weird for me to be doing this right now. Anyway, thank you. Okay, so Donald Trump finds out the Ark of the Covenant is real. Now what happens? It doesn't have to actually be the Ark of the Covenant. I feel like there's not a lot of story potential in it literally being the Ark of the Covenant and it literally being Indiana Jones. But I do feel like Donald Trump needs to... And it doesn't have to be Donald Trump either. That's obviously... There's the basis for the idea that you have, and then there's the actual reality of where it can go. So I was thinking that there are two possible roads for this story, and neither one of them has a long shelf life. Part of this is also that I not only is there this immediacy in me being able to go online and share this idea, I feel like this story requires the immediacy of the current cultural climate. Because I'm hoping that Donald Trump won't be the president for much longer, and so no one's going to give a shit about this story, if they even would now. They're definitely not going to give a shit about this story when he's not the president, I think. So I feel like there's also a bit of urgency needed in getting this idea out there. So all that to say that there are two potential ways that you could set up this story. And so I'm going to start making a sort of diverting threads here. One is single story. Let's go with comic book. I want people's faces to, I want to be able to get like kind of like 80s horror. I think the height of gore should be the end of Indiana Jones, where people's faces are melting off and exploding. I don't want to get much more explicit than that. I'm looking for sort of like pulp horror comic vibe. So I'm thinking comic book. I don't know how you could produce this otherwise. I don't think it would be fun to just read as a story. I think you need to be able to see it, but I'm not going to go out there and film people's heads exploding. See, now this is great. This is exactly what I want. We've already got someone in the chat here, and this is very important. I'm sorry, I'll get back to writing, but I need to address this real quick. Now, we have Kristen Anderson in the chat. Kristen Anderson, friend of the show, friend of this show, friend of mine, my sister. Now, just might how, that's a confusing start. Now, just might how Harrison, wow, Kristen, this is a complicated question. It seemed obvious when I started reading it, but now I'm going to read it literally. Now, just might how Harrison's Ford earring play into all of this. Harrison Ford's earring is definitely one of the mythological artifacts held in that warehouse. And now I feel like that is something that a different team needs to be racing to get. Because I'm not... I'm taking that dumb question and actually turning it into like a plausible reality for this. I'm very drunk. Sorry, I don't know why it came out like that. That is the perfect way for that question to be written. Thank you. Because I feel like it's possible for this story to be written from Donald Trump's perspective, where it's literally him like lying in a bed or sitting on a toilet watching Fox and Friends and tweeting at the same time, and then he switches the channel or whatever and sees Indiana Jones. Like it could be a literal satirical weird one-shot comic, single shot comic. Oh man, wow, Kristen, you actually just helped me. I think single shot comic. Is it a comedy, or is it an adventure, or is it a horror? These are my questions. Because if it's a comedy, I genuinely would consider going into the warehouse and exploring the other things that are in there and having one of them be Harrison Ford's earring. I don't know what that would do. I don't know what the magic of that would be. Maybe it gives you the magic ability to crash the airplane that you're flying. I don't know. You think it's definitely a comedy? I think it's a comedy, but when I say is it a comedy or is it a horror, is it an adventure, I don't mean is this should this contain elements of comedy? I think it has to. I think there's no way to write this story without it having an element of comedy to it, but you can write comedy in such a way that it's not overtly obvious. Like, even if this were the driest thing you ever wrote, it's a comedy because it's a satirical position to take. What if Donald Trump not only hey, what if the Ark of the Covenant was real? What if magic was real? But what if Donald Trump found out about it and got his hands on it? If you wrote that to be the most serious, like, you son of a bitch, you'll never defeat me story, it would still be comedy, to me at least. The earring unlocks the covenant, or whatever the fuck needs to happen. You slip it into some sort of small hole that's hard to find. There should be a small hole that's hard to find on this thing. And it's the perfect size of Harrison Ford's earring. Harrison Ford's earring was passed down to him by his grandfather. Does that work? That Harrison Ford's earring isn't just because he's got style, obviously. It's because it's always been a magical artifact, and it was given to him by his great-great-grandpappy. And there's like an ancient scroll that like gives like a weird cryptic hint that the earring is part of a larger puzzle or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. So that's so stupid. Yeah, he doesn't want to wear it. He doesn't want to wear it. He has to. He has to keep it safe. You're right, Kristen. It's a burden that he doesn't necessarily want, but he can't ignore his destiny. He can't ignore. You're 100% right. See, now I feel like that is awesome, genuinely awesome, and I feel like it could easily be its own script. That's hilarious. Somebody is hunting down. Hey, what if he has to find the other earring? He's been wearing that one earring all the time. What if he has to find the other earring, and that is in the hidden place? Hey, the hidden place where all things end up. That's kind of Indiana Jones and kind of Harry Potter. All these lost artifacts being in one place. It's like the room of requirement. But yeah, it's not enough to have the one earring. You have to find the other. It has a twin. Somebody can literally say that. Somebody can say to Harrison Ford, it has a twin. There is another. That's kind of amazing. All right. So I'm going to write 3 branching paths for this. Comedy. I'm also literally going to write this down. I know this is an alternate idea. I'm also working not on any predefined structure for things. This is like a totally homegrown format for writing stuff. He's been wanting to wear to this whole time his version of a broken medallion. And then friend of the show / birthday boy, Bob Kester is in the chat. Maybe he finds something in his underwear, like a spider or a bug, and boy is he scared. Or what if that happens? You're right. Your idea is cool too. You guys are awesome. All right. Alternate idea. Harrison Ford's earring is the key. Artists, get at me. Artists, hit me up because we've got gold. His brother's name is Kiso Kester. Yeah, I've been on all those tweets as well, Bob. Thanks. There's somebody, one of the listeners of the shows is working on developing a script with Bobby, and I'm included on every single tweet. 100% of them. Kiso Kester. Yep, that was one of the greatest ideas. Okay. Harrison Ford's earring is the key is just its own pitch. I feel like it's got legs. And I feel like that is the elevator pitch. If you were meeting with the head of Crackle or CISO or one of these other things that I keep hearing about but don't know what they are, and they go like, all right, I've only got 5 seconds. Just give me your idea. If you said, Harrison Ford's earring is the key, you've got their attention, and you're going to be the biggest name in Hollywood. Kristen, please remind me, this is genuinely a really funny, good idea, and I feel like I now want to see that as well. Artists, email me, will@talkbomb.com. If anyone ever sees this, anyone, please. Okay. So there are ways to do it as a comedy. Donald Trump literally on the toilet tweeting while watching Indiana Jones. Right? Total outside reality, wacky, zany comedy. Donald Trump has a good idea. But then my question is, how do you actually sustain that? I think that has to be a single one comic book, and it feels like it would be a short one. I don't think that has much longevity to it. So Donald Trump on the toilet tweeting while watching Indiana Jones gets it in his head that there might actually be a warehouse like the one in the movie. Is he right? So I feel like from there I feel like this could also get really kind of big and wacky where since he's in the White House. He's not there right now because he's vacationing. He's at Mar-a-Lago. But he could literally be wandering around the house in the middle of the night, like in his underwear. You know, like when you were a kid and you'd go downstairs and your dad was watching TV in his underwear? Did everyone have that experience? But like I feel like Harrison Ford, Harrison Trump, Donald Trump. I feel like Donald Trump is 100% the guy to just start walking around the White House at like 2 a.m. in his underwear. And, you know, he's probably got, this is also like, there's a total modern jackass aspect to this. Like, I know nothing about politics. I am uneducated in the extreme. But I would imagine that there's 24-hour staff in the White House active. Like, it doesn't ever really feel quiet and empty. But I really want Donald Trump in his underwear to wander into, like, an intelligence briefing room and just, like, everyone's working and checking charts and, like, dealing with blinking lights on the wall that mean something. He's like, at the end of Indiana Jones, there's the warehouse, the big warehouse, the huge warehouse. How do I get there? And then the staff has to. It's almost now like a question for them, like, this. Even some of us like this guy. It doesn't seem like a good idea. It's one thing for him to have access to, like, the nukes. There's a precedent for that. But, like, maybe, like, Barack Obama and George W. Bush and Bill Clinton, no one's asked where that warehouse is, and it is real. And now they have a real debate in their heads. Do we tell this guy where to find the box that, like, sends ghosts out that melt your face? Like, that doesn't seem like a good idea, but he is our boss. Uh-oh. Donna Marie Stewart in the chat. Elements of this story remind me of the show Warehouse 13. I would call it a dark comedy, especially if Harrison Ford's earring is involved. You are right. I've never heard of Warehouse 13, though. I'm also going to start to try, historically, every time that I've found out that one of my ideas already exists, I typically shut down. But I feel like this idea is so sort of weird and wacky and kind of stupid that I'm not too worried about it existing before. Warehouse 13. Following an abrupt transfer, Secret Service agents Pete Latimer and Mika Bering find themselves in the middle of South Dakota at a massive, top-secret storage warehouse that holds every strange artifact, mysterious relic, out-of-this-world object, and supernatural souvenir ever found by the U.S. government. Latimer and Bering's new task, as directed by the warehouse's caretaker, long-term agent Artie Nielsen, great name, Artie Nielsen, is to investigate reports of the unexplainable and paranormal activity in an effort to secure more peculiar and dangerous objects, and to help Artie manage the warehouse itself. Now that is this idea with one major like crucial difference. This is pure procedural, right? Like that's sort of another X-Files excuse. I don't mean excuse in a lazy way, but like it is that the same conceit as X-Files. We're going to investigate the paranormal and add it to this room. Kind of like Fox Mulder had his X-Files, and they were accruing new cases, new kinds of X-Files to add to that database. My idea is, hey boy, the heroes, like the original heroes, the original action movie heroes, all did a great job. They supported our country by taking down our enemies who wanted to destroy us. But they could not have seen. There's also like a weird sort of like bitter irony to it that Indiana Jones worked his dumb ass off to catch all this shit to add to this warehouse thinking it'd be safe. But little did he know, he solved all the puzzles in the way so that someone like Donald Trump could just get to them immediately by driving, down the road or wherever the warehouse is. In Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, they retcon that warehouse as being Area 51. There's like literally an alien body in there. Why did I say that? But yeah, it could easily just be down the road in Washington, D.C. I think it's really crazy to think that somebody was doing, fighting the good fight and doing good work. But what he actually was doing in the long run was putting all of these deadly, monstrous, impossible to understand artifacts in one room so that some dummy doesn't even have to think, doesn't even have to solve a single puzzle. He didn't have to go to the Well of Souls. He didn't have to jump into that pit of snakes. What else happens in Indiana Jones? He didn't have to ride in a submarine. I don't know. That's something that happens in that movie. He didn't have to dodge arrows and booby traps. It's all landed in his lap. He's the president. and there's a big warehouse that Indiana Jones filled with deadly weapons. We could even, one of the things that I was thinking, if this were an ongoing, or we'll just call it a mini-series, because I feel like this is an idea that you can get tired of really, really quickly. I feel like it can't last more than, I don't know, 12 issues, tops, a year-long story, one a month for 12 months. You could make this an ongoing story by having it be a procedural crime sort of adventure. There's someone who works for the CIA or Secret Service. Who I don't know who this would be, for whatever, for a governmental agency who is afraid that Donald Trump will eventually realize there's a warehouse full of deadly artifacts. He is secretly racing against the clock to empty out that warehouse before Donald Trump can get in. So it's a reverse. It's a total inversion. Instead of going out there into the world and interviewing people and following up on weird paranormal events that are happening in a farmhouse and then finding out that it was based on this artifact and then catching that artifact and bringing it to the warehouse, inside out. Somebody inside the government wants to stop Donald Trump. So they are working with the government, sort of, I guess this would make them a double agent, right? So they've infiltrated, but I feel like it should be somebody who's been there, like stayed over from the previous administrations, and they are now trying to go artifact by artifact, because they can't move everything at once, because it'll be too obvious. Take each thing that's in there and get it out. So this way, you get this real sort of like lore-based mythology of each individual artifact. That could be kind of cool. That could be cool. And if it's the guy that managed the warehouse forever, that people forgot about, because I feel like one of the other aspects of that warehouse at the end of Indiana Jones is that it feels remote. It feels like it exists somewhere out there, but we don't know where. And especially over the past 70 years, I think it'd be very cool if the government, somebody in the government didn't forget about it, right? Like, there's no way you'd forget about it. But by and large, most people ignore that place. I feel like if we set a vibe that it is managed by one guy who keeps a list of everything that's in there, and it's dusty in there and it's quiet, and he does nothing all day. His job is to basically sit at the front desk or whatever, and if people come by, all right, he gives them some bullshit story until they leave. But now that there is some, like, a crazy person in charge, he gets the motivation, he gets the energy in himself to finally do something. Because he's been protecting these things all this time. Maybe not 70 years, he'd be an old man. But he's been protecting these artifacts in this warehouse for so long. He feels like he really needs to kick things up. Truly protect these artifacts, protect all of us, get them out of the reach of Donald Trump. Ali Palmer, friend of the show in the chat, just got an ad for Cats before the video started. Can't think of a better targeted advertising. Neither can I. Everyone go out there and see Cats. I did. So did Ali for our anniversary. It was weird and bad and great. Donna Marie Stewart, I think it has huge potential. HBO miniseries, love it. Get HBO on the phone. I've never known what I'm doing. I have no idea how to pitch. But that sounds pretty great. Ali Palmer. So it is Donald Trump. Whole episode / chapter based on trying to increase hand size. He gets word in there that there are like the gloves, the wrist gauntlets of of an ancient warlord. See, this is why HBO won't pick this up, because of ideas like this. He finds out that there are the wrist gauntlets of an ancient warlord, and what it's supposed to do, it's supposed to maximize your effectiveness at hand-to-hand combat. So he interprets that as, oh, it's going to maximize, it's going to make everything huge. My hands will be gigantic. I'll be able to hold everything at once. I'll be able to I don't know. Love it, Al. You're a producer now. Okay, so single shot comic, I feel like either has to be one or the other. It's either comedy or it's horror. And bear in mind, once again, I think that no matter what, even if I called this horror, it would also be comedy. Just by default, this is a comedic, absurd, satirical idea. So comedy is always in there, one way or another. Okay, that's if it's a single shot comic. I want to start to make these things stand out because I genuinely like how we're going. I haven't technically written much, but that's part of documenting for me is talking. So that counts. Single shot comic. Is it a comedy? Might be a horror. Alternate idea. Harrison Ford's earring is the key. All right. Let's take this and let's give it its own space down here because I genuinely love it. But I want to keep this space focused on the Donald Trump show. We could also just call it the Donald Trump show. All right. So, Donald Trump finds out the Ark of the Covenant is real. Now what happens? It doesn't have to actually be the Ark of the Covenant. Let's get rid of that. Okay. Now, here are our concepts. Single shot comic. Comedy. Donald Trump on the toilet tweeting while watching Indiana Jones. Gets it in his head that there might actually be a warehouse like the one in the movie. Is he right? Love it. Kristen has to go watch Big Little Lies. Happy writing. Thanks, Chris. Enjoy the show. We read Big Little Lies on Book Club Schmuck Club. Let me know if it stacks up. I'm curious. Am I going to get into a ratings war with Big Little Lies? Which is also on HBO. So, my future home. I might be battling against right now. Okay. Donald Trump on the toilet tweeting while watching Indiana Jones. Is he right that there's a warehouse? Where do you go? Where do you go from here? Let's start doing these as bullet points as if... You know what? Here's what I actually want to do. Because I'm enjoying this. I think this is fun. I think this is a fun, weird way to do this. I want to be able to do future episodes of The Joy is Writing. They won't all be focused on this idea, but I feel like this is really cool. So let me just explore some of these possible avenues, and then next time we'll actually start to plot out actual beats. This chapter 1, total exploration of the concept. And the more that I've talked it out here with you guys, the more I feel like it's genuinely viable. So let me just finish plotting out potential. Single shot comic. Let's get rid of format. Let's stick with genre. Is this idea a comedy? Is it a horror? Is it an adventure? And then based on that, we can determine format. Genre trumps format for me. Comedy. Horror. Now, the horror aspect here, I think, would be to... How do you highlight this horror? You could make it... You could do a few things that I think are outside of my abilities as a writer, especially right now, where I feel like to make this a horror, you could focus on the obvious, which is these artifacts. You know, the Ark of the Covenant melted people's faces. There were ghosts that were like making people's heads explode. You could do that. You could have a bunch of artifacts that make you choke to death. That's scary. Or the horror aspect is sort of like the larger concepts of like social fallout. Like the horror here could almost be more of a Body Snatchers type. The president is an alien almost kind of thing. Not literally, but the president is against the people, right? That's the horror here. The president is actively hunting down things and maybe even testing them, right? Like the horror here could be that Donald Trump gets into the warehouse pretty quickly and takes one or more of the artifacts to attempt to use them. And what happens then? I don't know. That feels looser. That does not feel nearly as interesting or entertaining to me. Maybe I'll get rid of horror. I think it's either comedy or adventure. Comedy or adventure, not horror. Yeah, I'm getting rid of horror. I don't think it works. I'll keep thinking, but I don't think that that is an actual viable future. Comedy or adventure. There's someone who works for a government agency who's afraid that Donald Trump will eventually realize there's a warehouse full of deadly artifacts. He is secretly racing against the clock to empty out that warehouse before Donald Trump can get in. I like it. I like it. I am going to revise this part to literally be the person in charge of, we'll worry about names later, the Indiana Jones warehouse decides he needs to empty hide each artifact in the room from Donald Trump. He needs to get them out. He's secretly racing against the clock to empty out that warehouse before Donald Trump can get in. Before Donald Trump realizes the stories are true. Kind of like that. Yeah, I like that. This could really be like every month there's a new artifact. And we could even tell the stories not as like, hey, this is the artifact that does this is artifact X. It does Y to you. I'm moving it out of the warehouse. It could be this is artifact X. Now flash over to a story of when people found out what it does to you, right? Like this could almost be, all right, for the sake of argument, it could be that, what is his name? I like this name in here. Artie Nielsen runs that warehouse, and he's been running it for decades. Everything is covered in dust. No one goes there anymore. And he decides he needs to get the stuff out. So Artie Nielsen takes the first box, right? And he knows what it is. So he's pushing the box out of the warehouse, and we flash over to how the box was used originally. And it's like, maybe how it was made. I don't know if I ever want to go into how it was made. I think that it's fun to, you don't know how the Ark of the Covenant was made. You don't know who makes it, anything like that. You just hear legends about what it is and what it does, and then you find out where it's been resting. And then you see what it does to you. Maybe those are the stories. Maybe it's the stories you flash to the adventurers who found the artifact and took it. Is that fun? Is that fun if we tell the story through flashbacks? It gives you the opportunity to show a classic sort of Indiana Jones type adventure. And you could do different time periods. That almost feels to me like sort of vignettes that you could have like in issue 1, because this story is obviously playing off of concepts set up in Indiana Jones. Artie Nielsen is pushing this thing out of the warehouse, and then we literally flash over to the story of, a 1940s explorer as he braved like booby traps to get to this artifact, to beat the Nazis and to steal it in the warehouse. And then at the end of the comic, we show Artie Nielsen bringing it to its new home, something like that. And then in another issue, like the next month, it could be a 1970s guy who went somewhere and found this other artifact, and here's how he got that, and now here's where Artie Nielsen's bringing it. Is that fun, or does that feel that feels a little less inspired. That begins to feel a little more generic and like I'm just trying to pay homage to different sort of adventure type movies. That feels like it's like an homage-a-thon. I don't know. I think this is interesting. I think it's weird. I think you could really do a quick comedy. I think you could almost make it be like Donald Trump as Indiana Jones trying to track down if this warehouse is real. I feel like that's kind of interesting. I don't know. All right. I think I'm going to call it quits for now. I think this is a really interesting place. I think that, especially now having just said what I think an idea is, it feels both exciting and, as I said before, it makes me feel a little vulnerable that it's out there. But I think it's entertaining. I think that it raises a lot of questions, which is good. I think that there are a lot of avenues where you could possibly bring things, which is good. It's all about now execution. How to do it. And, I mean, frankly, is it multiple ideas? Are there multiple ideas that you could get out of this? I genuinely like the idea that Harrison Ford's earring is the key to something. I don't know. All right, my mom in the chat. Artifacts are on Facebook. Artifacts. Monopoly just changed out the thimble from the game. Exchanged it with a cat, which joins the dog, top hat, and car. Maybe something gets switched out of the warehouse, gets exchanged for another artifact. I like that. Is the guy that runs the warehouse... How do you empty out that warehouse? Right? You can't just take out all the crates. I still think it's best if that warehouse is long forgotten. No one ever goes there. But I think that if you literally emptied it, if someday somebody walked by and it was a giant empty space, that would not be great. So maybe the caretaker is bringing other things in. He's doing a swap out. I don't know. That's kind of interesting. I think that you have to at least leave the crates empty and just take the stuff out. Maybe he finds out... You know what? That could be a story too. Donald Trump gets into the warehouse that evidently exists. Guess what? I have all of these things are at my disposal. Thanks, Indiana Jones. And then he finds out that somebody already cleaned out the warehouse. Everything is gone. Like, he opens up a crate. He, like, crowbars open a crate. And there's, like an old shoe. Like the cartoons of, like, when you would go fishing and try to catch a fish and you'd catch an old boot. He opens a crate and there's an old boot in there. Well, then, shit, where is the Ark of the Covenant? Well, this guy, some adventurer, snuck in and took it. And now it's been hidden in a new hiding place. Do we go super modern with it, right? What's the modern equivalent of going to, like, a cave full of booby traps? Can you do a modern take on that? You have to brave modern booby traps or something? Maybe that's an idea. That's kind of cool. Interesting stuff. A lot of questions, and that's sort of the point. I love it. This is how I used to write, where you just kind of spitball. You just kind of throw things out there. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I truly, genuinely appreciate it. I can't believe... I'm really... Frankly, I'm only stopping because I'm already over an hour. And it's kind of an artificial thing, but to me, an hour is the max that something like this could ever go for. As it stands, I don't know how many people have any actual interest in watching this, but the point is to try something new, to try something different, and take something that's usually personal and quiet and make it loud and public. So let's see how this plays out. So thanks again for watching. Thank you so much for chatting. If you're watching this after I've finished, please feel free to leave a comment below. Is this idea stupid? Is this idea fun? Hit the thumbs up button below if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe. Talk Bomb is an organization where we try to put out a lot of comedy, a lot of podcasts. So go check out talkbomb.com. Go check out thehauntedSponge.com for sort of my writing about like the horror genre, and follow me on Twitter where I'm at Will Rogers 2000. And let's do this again. I like this. I think that this could be cool. I think that I should maybe do some more actual writing, because I didn't get super duper far, but this is the exploration phase, so I feel pretty good about that. I think the concept is solid. So, okay. Until next time, guys, I'm Will Rogers, and thank you for watching. Good night.